Few modern franchises have reinvented themselves as boldly as Star Trek did with the launch of its Kelvin timeline. Beginning with Star Trek, directed by J.J. Abrams, the series split from its established continuity into a parallel universe, one shaped by a single catastrophic event. What followed was a trilogy that reimagined iconic characters like James T. Kirk and Spock for a new generation, while still honoring decades of legacy. And yet, despite its success and untapped possibilities, the Kelvin universe now sits in frustrating limbo. At its core, the Kelvin timeline thrives on narrative freedom. By diverging from the original continuity through the destruction of the USS Kelvin, the franchise gave itself permission to remix canon without being shackled by it. This allowed actors like Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto to reinterpret legendary roles in ways that felt fresh but respectful. The films could explore alternate paths. What happens when Kirk grows up without a father, or when Spock is shaped by a more emotionally turbulent universe? That creative flexibility is exactly why canceling, or indefinitely shelving, the Kelvin universe feels like such a misstep. Unlike the Prime timeline, which is now densely packed with interconnected series like Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, and Star Trek Discovery, the Kelvin timeline remains relatively open. There are fewer constraints, fewer continuity landmines, and far more room to take risks. It could easily support standalone films, limited series, or even crossovers that would be impossible elsewhere in the franchise. One of the most compelling unresolved threads comes from Star Trek Beyond, which hinted at a more mature phase for its characters. By the end of that film, the crew of the Enterprise had finally settled into their roles. Kirk embraced leadership not as rebellion, but as responsibility. Spock began reconciling his dual identity with newfound clarity. This was the moment the Kelvin crew truly became the versions fans recognize, and it's precisely where their story stops. There's also the emotional weight of real-world circumstances that adds depth to future storytelling. The passing of Anton Yelchin, who portrayed Chekhov, left a profound impact on both fans and the cast. Rather than halting the series, this loss could be respectfully woven into the narrative, giving the Kelvin timeline an opportunity to explore grief, legacy, and unity in a way that aligns with Star Trek's humanistic core. Financially and culturally, the Kelvin films have proven their worth. The first two entries were major box office successes, and even beyond earned praise for recapturing the spirit of classic Star Trek. More importantly, these films introduced the franchise to a younger, more mainstream audience, many of whom might never have engaged with the older series. Abandoning this timeline risks losing the audience entirely. In an era where multiverses dominate popular storytelling, from superhero sagas to science fiction epics, Star Trek already has a built-in advantage. The Kelvin timeline isn't a gimmick. It's a fully realized alternate reality with its own history, tone, and identity. Letting it fade away now would mean walking away from one of the franchise's most versatile storytelling tools. Simply put, the Kelvin universe isn't out of potential, it's overflowing with it. And if Star Trek has always been about exploring strange new worlds, then perhaps it's time to revisit one that's been waiting far too long.